It's a strange thing, isn't it? We've got longer lifespans, more comfort, more stuff than any other time in history. But why do so many of us feel anxious, unfulfilled, a little bit lost? Well, today we're going to unpack a pretty provocative theory that suggests the very system that's supposed to make our lives easier is actually the root of the problem.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll tackle the main claim, this idea that our world has gone a bit crazy. Then, we're going to get into a really key concept called the human power process. From there, we'll see how the system messes with that process, what the fallout is for us, and finally, we'll look at this big, inevitable clash between our freedom and the system itself.
All right, let's jump right in with section 1. And, this argument, it doesn't really ease you into the shallow end. Nope, it throws you right in with a pretty bold and, honestly, a very challenging claim about our society.
Yeah, no pulling punches here. The central idea is that our whole industrial technological system, the very thing that provides our food, our jobs, our entertainment, is, and I'm quoting here, a disaster for us psychologically, for our mental and emotional health. That's a huge claim.
And that's the first thing you think, isn't it? A disaster? I mean, come on, this system gives us so much. So why on earth would anyone call it that? Well, the theory says it's because there's this massive, fundamental clash between the way we live now and, well, our basic human nature. And this right here is the absolute core of the argument. It's all about a mismatch, a huge one. See, our brains, our bodies, they evolved to thrive in one kind of world. But the modern world we've built, it's something completely different. And that friction, that gap between our programming and our reality, that, the theory claims, is where all the trouble starts.
Okay, so what is this big human nature thing that's getting ignored? What's this fundamental need? That brings us to the absolute centerpiece of this whole analysis. It's a concept the source material calls the power process. Now check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about having goals. That's not enough. The process is broken down into 4 parts. You need a goal, sure, but, and this is key, that goal has to take real effort. Then you've got to be able to actually achieve it. And maybe most importantly, you have to do it with autonomy, with your own initiative under your own control. So let's put it all together. The power process isn't about having power over other people. Not at all. It's about that feeling of competence, of self-worth, that you get from struggling towards a meaningful goal on your own terms. It's that internal sense of capability. And when we get to go through that whole cycle, it's like a workout for your soul, right? According to this theory, this is the engine. This is what builds real self-esteem, real self-confidence, and that feeling that you're actually in the driver's seat of your own life.
Okay, so if this power process thing is so important, so vital for our well-being, how exactly does our modern world mess it up? Well, the analysis points to 3 main ways it gets disrupted.
The first problem is, well, it's a paradox, really. It's about comfort. Just think about it for a second. Our ancestors, they had to hunt, build shelters, struggle just to survive. That was their power process, day in and day out. But today, the system basically hands us our basic needs. All we have to do is follow the rules, go to our jobs. The serious, meaningful struggle is gone. And with it, a huge source of fulfillment. So what happens when you take away that struggle? Well, the theory is pretty clear. It leads straight to things like boredom, feeling demoralized, low self-esteem, that nagging feeling of, what's the point? Our deep-seated biological need to struggle and overcome has basically been designed right out of our day-to-day lives. The second big disruption, a huge, massive loss of autonomy. I mean, this quote really nails it, doesn't it? The individual is analogous to a chess player whose moves are decided by a grandmaster. It feels like that sometimes, right? Like we're just cogs in this giant machine, following a script that someone else wrote. The power to really choose our own path feels pretty limited. And the third one, this one's a bit of a twist on our need for security. Think about it. Facing a predator, like a wolf, is terrifying, for sure. But it's simple. You can fight, you can run, you have some control. But what about modern threats? Things like pollution or corporate decisions made halfway across the world, or the economy. They're these huge, faceless forces that are completely out of our individual control. And that doesn't build confidence. It just leads to frustration and a sense of helplessness. All right. So if this natural drive we all have, this need to go through the power process, is constantly being blocked, what happens then?
I mean, that energy, that human drive, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just vanish. So let's look at how we cope with this broken process. So where does that drive go? Well, the theory suggests it doesn't just fizzle out. Nope, it gets rerouted. It gets channeled into other activities that kind of act as stand-ins or substitutes for the real thing.
And this leads us to another really key idea, the surrogate activity. What's that? It's basically an activity that's aimed at an artificial goal. You don't do it because you have to for survival. You do it for the feeling of fulfillment you get just from chasing the goal itself. It's like a simulation of the power process.
And you can see a bunch of examples right here. Things we spend a ton of our time on. According to this analysis, a lot of modern pursuits could be seen as surrogate activities. Scientific research, climbing the corporate ladder, getting really, really good at a sport, or even social activism. The point is, for many of these, it's not about the end goal as much as it is about the feeling of striving and achieving something.
This comparison here really drives home that point about autonomy. Think about it. The American frontier in the 19th century. That was a time of incredibly rapid change, right? Just like today. But here's the crucial difference. The pioneers felt like they were in control, like they were actively building that new world. And that led to a sense of optimism and self-confidence. For us, change often feels like something that's just happening to us, and that leads to anxiety and powerlessness. So where does this all lead? Well, it brings us to the final, and maybe the most challenging piece of this puzzle. The argument is that there's this inevitable, built-in conflict between our very human desire for freedom and what the technological system needs to survive.
And what's so important to get here is that this isn't painted as some kind of evil plot. It's not a conspiracy. It's presented as just a technical requirement. For a massive, complex technological society to run smoothly, human behavior has to be regulated. It has to be predictable. The system, just to function, needs us to fit neatly into our little slots.
And how does the system do that? Well, it's got a whole toolbox. We're not just talking about obvious things like rules and regulations. The theory points to things like propaganda, mass entertainment, the whole education system, even things like mental health programs. The goal is to shape us, to psychologically manipulate us into wanting the very things the system needs us to want. It's about making us behave in a way that's convenient for the machine.
And here is the ultimate paradox, the central trap. All those social problems that come from people feeling powerless and lacking autonomy, things like depression or anger or antisocial behavior. How does the system respond? With more control, more regulations, more management, which, of course, strips away even more autonomy and just makes the root cause of the problem even worse. It's a vicious cycle. So we're going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. After hearing this whole framework, just take a second and think about your own life. Where do you truly experience that full power process? A real goal that requires meaningful effort and where you have genuine autonomy. And maybe the bigger question is, what does it mean if you find that those moments are getting rarer and harder to find?